So let's talk about the science behind self-doubt. The amygdala is in this, it's part of your brain, and the amygdala is wired, that's the part wired to protect us from perceived danger. And yeah, it's super helpful in life-threatening situations, but it often overcorrects in moments of growth or change. We just need to identify the emotions and then we can reduce their intensity. So simply by just saying like, "Oh, I'm frustrated, I'm dysregulated, I'm feeling uncertain, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling so excited." I Whatever the feeling is, it helps reduce the power and intensity in our life. Welcome to The Julie Holly Show, From Wish to Reality, the podcast where we talk about how to turn your biggest dream into real life wins. Whether you're chasing a bold new goal, redefining success, or rediscovering what truly lights you up, this show will help you take inspired action and live with purpose. Let's get started. Today, we are diving into self doubt, how to quiet it and step forward with confidence. And let me tell you, it's really interesting that I'm recording this today because I still wrestle with this. I still wrestle with self-doubt after this is episode 578. I still can get in my head about this. So I'm definitely not coming from a posture of, hey, I've got this figured out and let me just like give you this little, special thing that's going to poof, it's gone. But all of the things that I'm going to support you with in this episode are going to give you, you will have actionable takeaways that will support you. And whatever you're doing, if you are stepping into your wish that you're trying to bring to reality, it is going to stretch you into your beyond your comfort zone. And so just be very aware of that. I'm wondering if you've ever had that feeling though of like you're right there, you're ready to take the next step, and then suddenly poof, self-doubt hits you like a wall. I've definitely experienced this more than once. Maybe you're standing in front of an opportunity. Maybe it's a big presentation or a conversation with someone important or launching a new idea. And then all of a sudden, you're just feeling paralyzed with doubt. I want you to know you are not alone. Self doubt is not just frustrating, it's also really exhausting and it will keep you stuck for far too long. In fact, I think it's just so ironic that today this is our topic because it's something that I was actually experiencing leading into this podcast episode. So, we're going to talk about some of the science behind it, but we don't want to just focus on the science behind it. We also want to focus and dip into the some of the emotional reasons why we face these self doubts and these limitations, and then we'll talk about what to do with it. Okay, so here, what like let's define our terms as we used to say back in college, right? So that we all know that we're on the same exact page. In this conversation, we will use, when I say self doubt, this is what I'm talking about. It's a mental hesitation and it whispers, "Are you sure you're good enough?" Right? And it thrives in uncertainty. It often masks itself as wisdom or being, air quotes, realistic. So that's what self doubt is. And this happens because there's this negativity bias. We've talked about this so much over the years on this show. But our brain has a natural tendency to focus on potential risks and threats. God designed and created us in that way. So, this is a great thing. And we really need to know when to that in our mind, right? Self doubt often stems from our nervous system attempting to keep us safe. And sometimes there isn't anything that we need to actually be safe and protected from. So let's talk about the science behind self doubt. The amygdala is in this, it's part of your brain, and the amygdala is wired, that's the part wired to protect us from perceived danger. And yeah, it's super helpful in life-threatening situations, but it often overcorrects in moments of growth or change. And so this is so critical that we just like recognize and say, okay, hey, amygdala, thanks for showing up, but there isn't a lion coming to eat me. I don't have an army coming to mow me down. Like, I'm okay. It's going to be fine. I'm just stepping into a moment of discomfort because I'm growing. So we have neuroplasticity. I'm so grateful that our brain can be rewired, that it can stretch, it can grow, and we can work with this. We can adapt it, right? Each time we face doubt and we choose action, we actually weaken the grip of self doubt and we strengthen the belief in our abilities. So, me feeling self doubt or kind of getting in my head, recording this podcast episode, which seriously, it cracks me up. And I hope it just like shines a light to you that these things are just part of being human, right? But we can release that grip of self doubt in our brains just by taking that forward action. You have probably heard me reference it's a great work. It's kind of the OG work on mindset, and that is Dr. Carol Dweck's book, Growth Mindset. I'm sure you have a copy on your shelf. If you don't, pick up a copy. It's definitely worth the read. And we can shift. She demonstrates how we can shift our brain. We can rewire the brain and our neurons and everything from that I can't to I can learn. So she is a pioneer, and she's credited, I should say, with being the pioneer of the growth mindset concept. And I think it's because it's not that she's the only one that was doing that work, but she was able to really communicate it in a way that we were able to understand and put into practice in a far more practical way. Okay, so while we want to recognize our brain and how important it is, I want to give you a spoiler that on Thursday's episode, my guest is going to be speaking about our entire nervous system. And this is so important. I've touched on it in some recent episodes, maybe a few months ago, but a lot of times we focus so much on our brain that we forget that our entire body has this central nervous system running through it that actually is what's communicating to our brain. And so we want to take time to understand how to regulate our nervous system so that when self doubt presents itself, we understand, okay, this is how I can stay regulated. And this is how I can re regulate myself in the situation. You don't want to miss out on the episode being released 2 days from now because it will get you dialed in a really powerful way. We're going to shift from the more sciencey side of things into the emotional side of things. You know, I'm such a huge fan of the path to action from Crucial Conversations. We have something that happens, we create that story about what just happened in less than a millisecond, which informs our feelings or creates our feelings, which leads to actions. And so we really do have to be aware of the stories and of the feelings that we are generating in our lives in order to overcome things like self-doubt. Because these feelings, these emotions are driving our actual actions. Whether you step up and say, "Yeah, I can take a lead on that project," or "I'm going to, I'm going to launch that podcast." Whatever it is that you are going to do, it will require you to really have a strong presence with what's going on inside of you. So there's this identity connection between our emotions and self doubt. And a lot of times, self doubt is strongest when it is threatening our sense of self. So, see if this lands for you. If I fail at this, what does that say about me? Oh, yeah. We've all I mean, we can all think, in the Holly house, I can tell you everybody at some point in a given week, at least one member of the family is gonna say, come into the room, maybe it's, breakfast time and like, "Hey, does this look okay?" Or, "Can you see this, pimple on my face?" Or, "Can you see that I'm getting more fit?" Or, "Can you" Right, we're looking for that, "What does this say about me?" I mean, those are all external, but it can also be, what does this say about my reputation? Like, oh, if I'm seen with this person, what's that going to say about my reputation? If I do this, how is this going to reflect? Is this a good look? Not just on the superficial shell of us, but is this a good look for who I am and how I want people to perceive me? And so we can sometimes give self-doubt in our identity too much voice in our minds. And so we need to be sure that self-doubt um, doesn't define our worth. It's a momentary feeling, it's not our identity. So when we're stepping into the discomfort of life, we can say, okay, that's okay. I'm going to step into the discomfort of this, but this is just a moment. And most of those moments don't last longer than 90 seconds. So if you can get beyond that 90 seconds of discomfort, guess what? You're going to be a okay. All right, let's talk about some actionable steps that you can take to just work through some of the self-doubt. And again, if you don't experience self-doubt, I want to encourage you to ask yourself a question of, where am I growing? Where am I stretching myself? Am I allowing myself to be on the cusp of discomfort in order so that I can grow? Or am I staying in the safety of what I know is safe and true and comfortable for me at this time? The first actionable step of the three I'm going to share today, one, name it to tame it. All right. So Dr. Dan Siegel, he said, hey, we just need to identify the emotions and then we can reduce their intensity. So simply by just saying, like, oh, I'm frustrated. I'm dysregulated. I'm feeling uncertain. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling so excited. Whatever the feeling is, it helps reduce the power and intensity in our life. So you can also put this as a sentence like, I'm feeling doubtful because, and just write it out, like actually say it aloud so that you can hear it. And a lot of times when we hear that, we're like, oh, isn't that funny? That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like me. That doesn't sound like the person I want to be. And we're able to grow in such a powerful way. The second thing we can do is we can create a confidence catalog. And this is the first time I've spoken of it in this way. In the past, I've spoken about it as a body of evidence. So we can make a list of our past wins. And guess what? A win could be as much as, I didn't eat a jelly belly today, or it could be like, I closed on that account. It could be, I didn't get frustrated when that driver cut me off. Like, you get to decide what big and small wins are for you, and only you are really going to know deeply what those are. And those, when we create that body of evidence, that confidence catalog, it just reminds us of what our capabilities and our capacity truly is. So here's another example. We could say, "Oh, I figured out how to navigate moving to a new city, so I can figure this out too." When I work with people and take them through the resilience mapping process, in that process, we're actually targeting an experience that we've had in the past that we've worked through to some capacity that was pretty powerful in our lives. And we are going back to it to mine the diamonds for this level of confidence so that we can say, wow, I was able to work through that financial situation back then in 2008 when things were rough. So I know that I'm going to be able to work through what we are facing right now. So we can just look at that body of evidence, that confidence catalog to help boost us forward. You can do this. Some of my favorite ways are, you could use Google Keep. That's been something Super Ed Steve introduced to me some months ago. I love Google Keep. It syncs on my computer, on my phone, anywhere I go. It's so handy, and you can actually label and categorize things. So you could actually put, like, my confidence cards, or confidence catalog, or whatever you decide you want to call this. And you could just click that label, and it looks like a bunch of post-it notes. And so you can actually just see all of these different examples, this body of evidence of who you are and how you really show up. In the past, I've also recommended, on your smartphone, you take pictures probably more than you realize. If you don't, start taking them. If you're in a moment where it's a win, take a picture of it and put it in an album. And again, just label that album something that sparks and lights you up, so that when you are feeling like dysregulated, frustrated, you need to tap into some of your moxie. There you go. You can tap into that right there. The final action that I would encourage you to take as you are trying to step forward with confidence is micro commitments. I know micro is so much fun. We've spoken so often about micro habits, but micro commitments are a little bit different. They're just small steps intended to reduce the overwhelm and create momentum. So they don't have to be rigid habits. It's not like um, micro habits or habit sampling. This is just a commitment, a small commitment that I am making to create some momentum for this very specific purpose. Here's a very specific example. You say, I need to write a book. I want to write a book, right? And then we can start with, okay, what's the first micro commitment I can make? Okay, I could outline that book and the first chapter. That's the very first micro commitment. Now, I would encourage you when you're making micro commitments to make 3 in a row, because once you've accomplished one, you don't have to go back to, okay, what's my next micro commitment? You can just go right into the next one, and it really helps you create that momentum. And I tell you, when you are getting momentum, it really helps your confidence soar because you're seeing what is coming about because of the actions that you are taking. It's so, so powerful. So the reality is that when we quiet that self-doubt, we open the door to pursuing our deeper wishes that God created us for. Those things that seem so far out of reach, too good to be true. And so that's why this is also really important to consider joining the wish fulfillment cohort, because it's designed specifically to guide people like you through these steps in real time in a coaching environment through a specific framework. You get the support you need to step forward with confidence. And I'll tell you, it's so much easier to do things when you are doing them with others in community. And this community is small. It's limited to 8 people. So it's not like you're doing this in a crowd. And I will say that in these coaching groups, the camaraderie and the friendships that form are just tangible, and they're friendships and relationships that last. They're not just, "Oh, cool, we did that thing together, way back when." It's, "Yeah, remember when our lives changed? That was so cool. I'm glad we got to experience that together." So if you've been feeling stuck or you're doubting your ability to move forward, join me inside the wish fulfillment cohort. Or if you're already on that trajectory and you're a leader and you're looking for community, because let's face it, as leaders, sometimes the conversations shift, and we can't have necessarily the same conversations with the people that we're leading as we can with other leaders, and other people who are going from wish to reality repeatedly. The wishmaker circle is for people like that. And so if you want to apply to that, just or if you want to join the wish fulfillment cohort, you can just go down to the show notes at the bottom and click on those links. I want you to know that you are not alone. Wherever you are at, you are not alone, and you are far more capable than you realize. Self doubt doesn't have to define your story. You get to write the next chapter. Remember that you are designed for growth. Doubt, it's normal, it's part of being human, but you don't have to stay in the doubtful, stuck zone. The moment you start moving, that doubt starts to lose its grip. I appreciate you. And you know what? Your wish isn't out of reach. It's waiting for you to believe in yourself.